And thanks for joining us on This Week in Jacksonville Business Edition, where we explore the people, the policy, the economic forces shaping Northeast Florida and our state's future. I'm Kent Justice, your host, and today we're taking a closer look at the intersection of our economic growth, workforce development, and opportunity. Specifically, new data showing a continued decline in childhood poverty across Florida, and really what that means for businesses, communities, and the state's long-term prosperity. So joining us today, welcome back to the program, Mark Wilson, President and CEO of the Florida Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Wilson leads the Chamber's efforts to strengthen Florida's economy through the Florida 2030 Blueprint, and then initiatives like the Florida Prosperity Initiative that focuses on breaking cycles of generational poverty and expanding economic opportunity statewide. So, Mark, welcome back. I appreciate it. This is a number of times that you've joined us on our program, and as I was telling you just as we were getting started here a moment ago, always something that I didn't know and that is important to understand. And so as we get into this, you've been tracking childhood poverty in Florida for years. What's the most important takeaway from this new report that business leaders really should understand right now?
Yeah, Kent, always great to be back with you again. Thank you for inviting the Florida Chamber on again. Look, Duval has a good news story right now, and that is that as Florida's economy is growing, one of the metrics we pay very close attention to is how are we doing with our kids? And there's a brand new report that our Prosperity Initiative just put out that said that Florida, we have fewer kids in poverty today than we did in the last report. So there's about 711,000 kids in Florida in poverty. And while that's a high number, it's down a couple 100,000 from about 6 years ago, about 8 years ago. And in Duval County, you've gone from 45,000 kids in the last report in poverty to just about 43,000 kids now in poverty. And so it's a good news story. And what we look for, Kent, is as the economy grows, we want to make sure it grows for everybody. And so if you're a kid that's born into generational poverty, one of the things we want to do is make sure we're bringing you a pathway so you and your family can get out of that situation you were born in. And it's a good news story in Duval.
Absolutely. So, yeah, just specific to Duval, I think the numbers you just gave, 3,000 fewer children in poverty. Maybe put that in perspective. Is that meaningful progress or is it just kind of incremental movement?
Yeah, so it's very meaningful progress. You're down about a percentage point from about 20% to 19%. And that really matters. Kent, just to put it in perspective, statewide, we have about 3,000 fewer kids in poverty statewide. So some counties have more kids in poverty, some counties have fewer. Duval County has about almost 3,000 fewer kids in poverty than in the past report. And that's the same number that the whole state has. And so we like to see fewer kids in poverty and a lower percentage in poverty as well. We want to see both of those moving in the same direction. Now, what's interesting is you have 36 zip codes in Duval County. And so, Kent, where this story gets really interesting is you've got amazing companies in Jacksonville. Florida Blue is a perfect example of someone who's investing a lot of volunteer hours and philanthropy in helping put initiatives together to help get kids out of poverty. And so in Duval County, you've got 43,000 kids in poverty and 36 zip codes, but half of all the children in poverty in Duval County are in only 6 of your zip codes. And so by you helping us raise awareness, companies are going to be able to focus their early learning efforts, their reading efforts, their food efforts, their healthcare efforts into the areas where it's needed most.
Mark, we've seen it, especially the last 5 years or so. Florida's added population, added children. So, and if poverty numbers still fell, then what's driving the change?
Yeah, I think a very focused effort by local business and community leaders to take a look at, what can we do to bring economic opportunity to the zip codes where it otherwise wouldn't have been. And Kent, again, everyone likes to talk about economic development in terms of the new corporate headquarters or relocating a manufacturing facility from, say, Germany to Jacksonville, which you did last year. Congratulations. But again, Florida, if Florida was a country, we would be the 15th largest economy in the world. We're bigger than Spain. We're bigger than Saudi Arabia. We want to be the 10th largest. But Kent, the research says there's no way to do it unless we provide economic opportunity and economic development for these kids and these families who have not been participating in the economy. And so a strong measure of how Duval's doing is how are we doing in childhood poverty? How are we doing in early learning? And both of those, we would love to see you talk about them all the time. We would love to see the county commission talk about them all the time, the school board talk about them, because when the Chamber of Commerce locally and your economic development leaders make this a priority like they have, positive outcomes happen like they have in Duval.
So Mark Wilson with us, Florida Chamber. So as you're talking through this, some things come to mind here, and you just detailed some of the zip code specific information in Duval County. The model that we're talking about really focuses heavily on zip code level data. Why is geography such a powerful predictor of these economic outcomes?
Yeah, Kent, thanks for that question. When I testified in Congress on this issue years ago, one thing I told Congress and one thing I tell the Florida legislature is if you're born into generational poverty, poverty is too big for a country, it's too big for a state, it's really too big for a county. Think how big Duval County is. What our research tells us, Kent, is poverty is a neighborhood thing, which means we have to pay attention to zip codes. So zip codes are where we can get a heck of a lot of data. It's the smallest measure of geography where we can get a lot of data on crime, on food, safer neighborhoods, on reading, on job skills, on job availability, on affordable housing. So what there are, Kent, you said it right. There's 36 zip codes in Duval County. Our research says that what's become known nationally as the Florida model, which is our prosperity initiative. Our statewide director, Heather Kogar, grew up in poverty. She grew up in the foster system. She broke the cycle of generational poverty. And so we're now trying to do that for another 711,000 kids. And the model, very simply, Kent, is we go into a zip code, we analyze the zip code with over 150 metrics. And just like a surgeon would do, we go into a zip code and we figure out what are the 3 or 4 things that can matter most, and how can we get the businesses in that zip code to be aware of it, and then execute the Florida model, which is a zip code level strategy to help break the cycle of poverty.
To 150, and your data here shows that more than half of Florida's children in poverty live in just 150 zip codes. It's just statewide. So that concentration, I think you're talking about it a little bit here. What does it tell us about how policy and business investment, all of that should be targeted?
Yeah, Kent, I'll tell you, I think you bring up a really good point, and that is that business and community leaders don't know what they don't know. And by using data to make decisions, statewide, there's 983 zip codes. And to your point, more than half of all of our kids in poverty live in only 150 zip codes. And right there in Duval, as I mentioned earlier, you have 36 zip codes, 43,000 kids in poverty, and over half of them live in only 6 of your zip codes. So imagine if businesses did their volunteer hours, their reading programs, their philanthropic dollars. Imagine if the county commission or the city council went in the same in Duval. Imagine if everybody locally, school board, United Way, chamber, civic group, you can't imagine if there was awareness of these zip codes and what needed to happen. There's no economic development. There's no recruiting at corporate headquarters that would scratch the surface compared to cutting childhood poverty in half. And you're doing it right there in Duval. You're one of the leaders in the state, and we want to shine a light on the good work of Duval.
You've identified 10 root causes of poverty. Which one do you believe Florida's maybe making the most progress on, and which one maybe still worries you or worries you the most?
Yeah, Kent, I will tell you, one of the 10 root causes of poverty is education. And there are pockets of excellence in Florida where we point to them and say, wow, this is really making a difference. But early learning, statewide, only about 43% of our kindergartners are ready for kindergarten, and only about 57% of our third graders are reading at or above grade level. This is particularly acute in the poorer neighborhoods around Florida, and we all know it. The single best way to break the cycle of generational poverty is to provide job training and job opportunities for the parent or parents, and to provide outstanding educational opportunities for the students who are trying to break their way out of poverty. So Kent, there's really no one silver bullet, so to speak, but if working with the sheriff, we can provide safer homes and safer communities for these kids, and at the same time, we can have a relentless focus. What if Duval was the first county in America where 100% of your kindergartners were ready for kindergarten and 100% of your third graders were reading at or above grade level? That would be something to celebrate, and you would be breaking the cycle of generational poverty faster than any county in America, and that's a pretty good goal to have.
No kidding. It's kind of inspiring just to think about, just to envision that vision you just cast right there. That would be really amazing. All right. So as we look at the data, Mark, I know some counties improved, others worsened. What separates communities that are succeeding from those that aren't making the progress we want?
Yeah, I think it has everything to do with focus. I think if you show me a community that's improving reading scores and cutting childhood poverty less than before, that's a community that's actually focused on this. And Kent, I wanted to, we have 67 counties and 411 cities, and I want to give everybody a little bit of a break here, or a grace period for maybe 6 months, because what we're finding when we put out our new prosperity report that reports on all 67 counties, what we're finding is some of the most informed people in a community, whether that's members of the media, whether that's CEOs, whether it's local nonprofit groups, whether it's the county commission. What we're finding, Kent, is people are saying, I had no idea. I didn't know that this was happening in my zip code, and I didn't know this was happening in my community. But now that I know, we're going to do something about it. And so what I'm really proud of the Florida Chamber Foundation's board and the Prosperity Initiative is they put the model and the solution together first. And so now, as people are waking up and realizing, wait, we have 1,000 kids in poverty in my zip code, what can I do about it? Well, businesses are becoming zip code leaders, and they're gathering up people who want to help with food and housing and transportation. I could be a nurse in Duval, but if my transmission went out on my car and I can't get to the hospital to work, then I lose my job. So we have solutions for all of this, and it's a matter of looking at the data and focus.
Our focus on the program here is really business and workforce. And so I want to explore that angle a little bit more with you. This initiative we're talking about, I mean, it's business led. So why should employers, if they're not already, why should they view childhood poverty as an economic issue and not just a social one?
Yeah, I get that question all the time. And just if we just look at Duval County alone, between now and 2030, employers in Duval County need to create about 75,000 new jobs. And when we think about that, the best way to find loyal employees is to find people who need to work and want to work, right? The work ethic of someone who needs to work and want to work, in other words, someone who's trying to work their way out of poverty right now, is someone who wants training, someone who needs a job, someone who wants to learn how to better themselves. And if you're going to work your way out of poverty, that means you want to take on more responsibility, you want to get certified, you want training, you want job skills. And so we have a group of people in Duval who don't know that there are employers out there who want them and need them and would like to train them. And what I would also say, Kent, is about half of our population in Florida is in what we call the ALICE population, which is a partnership with United Way. It stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, and Employed. And the simple definition of it is these are people who are working, but still have to make choices every month between, do I pay the rent bill, the light bill, my health insurance, or my car payment? And they're not making one of them. And so one of the best ways to help people who are already working for us is to find ways to find out if they want to be trained, do they want to get on a track where they're working more and earning more? And the truth is, the more awareness we can raise in a community like Jacksonville, the more opportunity we're going to be able to bring for people who want to work.
I'm curious about this. I mean, Florida businesses are creating jobs at a fairly rapid pace. Why doesn't that automatically translate into poverty reduction?
Well, in some cases, it's the rising tide lifts all boats. So in some cases, Kent, it's good for one, it's good for all. But the challenge, take Duval County as an example, with 36 zip codes, we might have economic opportunity on one part of the county, but we might not be bringing it to a zip code that is one of the 6 where half of your kids live in poverty. So sometimes, being thoughtful about where we put a distribution center, or being thoughtful about transportation. How are people going to get to work, or how are they going to get to school? Do they have access to daycare and childcare, as an example? We know we did a report in 2025 where over 150,000 adults in Florida quit work because of childcare costs or childcare availability. So Kent, unfortunately, it's like I said earlier, there's no one silver bullet. We have to look at location matters, the job training matters, and a lot of these families aren't very mobile. So if the job doesn't come near them, then they won't even know about it. So, thanks in part to what you're doing, we're going to be able to raise awareness. So people seeking jobs are going to be able to find those companies who are interested in providing the opportunities for people who are trying to work their way out of poverty.
The Florida Chamber of Commerce, I know the goal is to cut childhood poverty in half by 2030. At the
Right.
current pace, are we on track or are we behind?
Yeah, so when we started, we had almost 1.2 million kids in poverty, all the way back when I testified in Congress. And we've been steadily chipping away at that. We're now down to 711. The truth is, we need to pick up the pace. And the really great news, what motivates us here is there's almost no higher calling than to help break the cycle of poverty, because these kids have no hope if we don't bring it to them. And when you combine educational opportunities with job opportunities for the parents, it is a recipe, and safe neighborhoods, of course, which we have a partnership with the Sheriff's Association on that. When you put all that together, it's a recipe for economic opportunity for people who otherwise wouldn't have had it. So we do need to pick up the pace, and the best way to pick up the pace is to raise awareness to a business community who cares deeply about these issues, but they have to know about the issues before they can direct their philanthropy, their muscle, their awareness creating machine to what's happening in each zip code.
Beyond writing a check, what can local businesses actually do that's going to make an impact on this issue?
Yeah, every business in Florida can learn more about the Florida Prosperity Initiative and our zip code model. So you can simply look us up at the Florida Prosperity Initiative, and you can actually look up your zip code through the FloridaGapMap.org. You can get in touch with me or Heather or Christina or a member of our team. And we're recruiting 983 businesses across Florida, one per zip code, to say, hey, my business is going to take ownership of my zip code, and we're going to work with nonprofits, with the counties, with the cities, and we're actually going to cut childhood poverty one zip code at a time.
Mark, as we're talking through this, I mean, it's really interesting, and I know you referenced we've got a partnership with the Sheriff's Association. Maybe help. So, as you partner with law enforcement throughout the state leaders on child safety and what have you, help listeners understand, I guess, the connection between safety and economic mobility.
Yeah, it's such an important connection. So the Florida Sheriff's Association and the Florida Chamber's Prosperity Initiative announced a partnership last fall. And I mentioned Heather Kogar, our state director. She not only grew up in the foster care system, she also was a deputy sheriff before coming to work for us. And she vividly remembers, being on patrol and going out to a domestic and seeing a family where maybe there's a young child in a diaper, and they came back the next day for another call, and there they were in the same diaper 24 hours later. And so the director of our initiative has firsthand knowledge at this, not only as a deputy, but she lived it growing up as well before she broke the cycle.
Wow.
And Kent, where that comes in to today is we've been working with sheriffs all over Florida on, can we connect with the deputies that are patrolling those 6 zip codes in Duval County? Because those deputies can get to know the local businesses that are in those zip codes, and they actually can join forces. It's a bit of a neighborhood watch on steroids, if you think about it, because these employers not only see what's happening in the neighborhood, but they employ people in the neighborhood. And so through strong partnerships there, we also have a partnership with Florida's Attorney General, James Uthmeyer, and he'll actually be our keynote speaker on June 9 in Tampa for our annual Florida Prosperity Summit, where he'll be talking about what the Attorney General and the sheriffs and the business community can do to keep homes safer and communities safer. And Kent, it might sound obvious, but sometimes it's not. If kids aren't safe in their community, if they're not safe to learn, if the parents aren't safe to go work, then it's impossible to break the cycle of poverty. So it's why one of those 10 root causes for homes and safer neighborhoods. And Florida is known as one of the safest places in America. But when we have half of our kids in poverty and only 6 of our zip codes, we need to be especially diligent that those 6 zip codes are safe. We need to do that.
Mark, what do you think there are state policies? What state policies would need to change in order to affect this the most?
Yeah, I'll tell you, Kent, if you gave me a choice between raising awareness to the business community or changing state policy, I'll take raising awareness all day long. We've been changing state policy for a decade, and it's made a huge difference. And I'll give you just 2 quick examples. One is something that we pioneered a decade ago called fiscal cliffs. And now we see the Federal Reserve doing really important work here. And Kent, the concept is, in America, if you make an extra couple dollars an hour, it's possible you're going to lose your childcare assistance, or you could lose your food assistance, or you could lose your assistance for paying rent. And so literally an extra dollar an hour can cost you $2,000 a month in a stipend, if you will. And in Florida, we've largely changed those policies to put the value on work. So if you make a little bit more money, you're not going to lose your health insurance per se, or you're not going to lose your childcare assistance. The idea is putting a premium on work. I'll give you another example of something, Kent, that's not a policy. It's just innovation between our local state attorney here in the Tallahassee area and our state college president at Tallahassee State College. In Florida, we have about 1.8 million adults that never got their GED. And that really matters, because if you want to be a welder or a nurse or a truck driver, by the way, many of these are 6-figure jobs these days. You can't do that if you never got your GED. And so right here in the circuit that I'm in, if someone gets in trouble, let's say the sheriff arrests them in this area, the college president went to the state attorney and said, hey, what if as a condition of parole, we ask the judge to require you to get your GED as a condition of parole? And here in the Tallahassee area, our state college pays for that GED. And then you have a relationship with someone. The very best recidivism tool to keep someone out of trouble is to get them a stable job where they actually have hope in their future. And you can clearly see the connection between cutting childhood poverty in half and getting people a GED and getting these parents a good job and a brighter future. So it's all related, and there's no one silver bullet.
You close the loop on this in terms of policy and accountability or what have you. But how do you ensure that this data that you're offering remains, I guess, data driven and not politicized?
Well, we'll never politicize it. And of course, we can't stop other people from doing, what they will with it. But I had our political research team actually take a look at the 150 zip codes where half of our kids in poverty are. And it surprises a lot of people to learn that about half of the zip codes are in areas that are blue, and about half of them are in areas that are red. And so this old idea that, that part of town is blue or red is just not true. In fact, what we see in Broward County, where Fort Lauderdale is, they have a zip code where they have more kids in poverty in that zip code than any other zip code in Florida. And if you walk across the street to another zip code, it's got one of the lowest percentages of kids in poverty. Literally 50 feet away, you go from the highest to one of the lowest. And, that is necessary to get the word out on that, because, if a company will, simply reach across a couple blocks to create job opportunities, you can forever change the trajectory for these kids. It's a lot about awareness. So I appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah. Before we wrap up here, it's an opportunity, I think, for a lot of people who are listening right now. If you, Mark Wilson, CEO of the Florida Chamber of Commerce, if you could challenge Northeast Florida business community leaders with one specific action during this year, 2026, what would that be?
Yeah, look, if we really want to grow and diversify the economy and we want it to work for every single Floridian in Northeast Florida, Duval County and beyond, look up the Florida Prosperity Initiative and contact us and find out what's going on in your zip code, either where your business is located or where you live. And then consider taking a lead role. It doesn't cost any money to organize a little bit of an effort locally to raise awareness in your neighborhood, to other businesses, to work with your sheriff, to work with your chamber, to say, hey, here's what's going on in my zip code. And we are going to focus our efforts, our philanthropic efforts, on getting kids to read and on cutting childhood poverty in half by simply connecting the dots that already exist in the community. We don't need new programs. We don't need more money. We need to raise awareness so good people, adults who care about these kids, can just better connect the dots in the community. And that's why I'm so grateful for what you're doing, Kent. It matters a lot.
Mark, I certainly am moved by the discussion, and I think a lot of the people, the majority of the people who are going to listen or watch this episode of our podcast, they're going to be moved. And I think it's a matter of we don't just want to turn a blind eye. It's just we get so focused on other things because we've got businesses to run, we've got quotas to meet, we've got products to make, all of those sorts of things. So I appreciate what you and the chamber are doing to bring this up and explain it beyond just, oh, isn't that sad? You're saying, here's our focus and here's what we're going to do to change it. And here's why changing it really matters.
That's right. Yeah, Kent, that's exactly right. And I'll tell you, I mentioned before, we need about 75,000 new jobs in Duval County. And most businesses would report that they have more jobs than qualified people showing up. And here we have a population that's in poverty, that wants to get out of poverty, that needs to learn and needs to work. It literally could be a perfect marriage if businesses were open to interviewing these people. And that's what we're trying to do.
Mark Wilson, I appreciate it. CEO of the Florida Chamber of Commerce. We appreciate your perspective. And to everybody listening and watching today, thank you for joining us for this Week in Jacksonville Business Edition. Wherever you get your podcast, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. New episodes come out every Thursday at 9 a.m.